Suffice it to say is that when countries engage in disinformation, it creates risk. The Chinese Communist Party tells us they want to be our partners, they want to be transparent. We need partners we can rely on, that when they tell us something, it is accurate and that we don't think they're hiding anything. Look, we still haven't gained access, the world hasn't gained access to the WIV, the Virology Institute there. We don't know precisely where this virus originated from. There are multiple labs that are continuing to conduct work, we think, on contagious pathogens inside of China today, and we don't know if they are operating at a level of security to prevent this from happening again. Remember, this isn't the first time that we've had a virus come out of China. And so there is a continuing obligation on the part of reliable partners to share this information with the world. We talk about this in the context of nuclear assurance all the time, where countries permit others to come in and see their systems to make sure that the locks and keys are right, that the security levels are right, that the technological capability is right, that the checks are right, so that you can prevent an accidental nuclear release. We need the same kinds of processes for biosystems and biolaboratories as well. And so we would urge every country, all of our partners, to demand that we get answers for what happened here, but also that we continue to we get the transparency, that the world gets the transparency it needs to make sure that those who are conducting scientific research on complex viruses and pathogens are doing so in a way that doesn't create the risk that we get precisely the economic devastation and the enormous loss of life that we've all suffered as a result of this virus that came out of Wuhan, China. It's been 128 days since Chinese Dr. Ai Fen, the director of the Wuhan Central Hospital's emergency unit, shared information on the internet about a patient with a SARS-like virus. Her colleague, Dr. Li Wen Liang, shared Dr. Ai's report online with medical colleagues. The next day, December 31st, regional health officials in Wuhan indicated they were treating dozens of patients with an unknown viral pneumonia. And within days, Chinese officials detained Dr. Li, 7 others, for spreading false statements on the internet. China saw then that it had an emerging public health crisis on its hands. They knew. China could have prevented the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. China could have spared the world descent into global economic malaise. They had a choice, but instead China covered up the outbreak in Wuhan. Its National Health Commission ordered virus samples destroyed on January 3rd. China disappeared brave Chinese citizens who raised alarms. It deployed its propaganda organs to denounce those who politely called for simple transparency. And that brings us to today, 120 days on. China is still refusing to share the information we need to keep people safe, such as viral isolates, clinical specimens, and details about the many COVID-19 patients in December 2019, not to mention patient 0. Our truth-telling and calls for transparency aren't about politics. It's not about bullying. It's not about blame. It's about the ongoing need to save American lives. This is an ongoing threat. Today, ask medical professionals in New York City. I think they'll agree with that. We need countries to share reliable data in a timely way now and the next time that a calamity like this hits. We need reliable partners. As a result of China's choices, countries are starting to understand the risk of doing business with Chinese Communist Party and taking action to protect their people. A few examples. In recent weeks, Nigeria, Kazakhstan, and France have demarched the Chinese Communist Party ambassadors for a whole host of lies and misdeeds. Spain has returned defective test kits made in China. That country, the Czech Republic, other nations have received shoddy PP as well. The Australians and the Swedes have called for an independent review into the outbreak. And my friend Dominic Raab has said that the United Kingdom can't go back to, quote, business as usual, end of quote, with Beijing. Even the EU's foreign affairs chief admitted that Brussels has been, quote, a little naive, end of quote, about China. I'm heartened by this newfound realism. The free nations of the world are starting to understand that China doesn't share those democratic values that we hold dear or their economic interests, and that this matters to the entire world. There's no true win-win with a communist regime unless you get to the fair terms that President Trump has talked about and the reciprocity that President Trump did in the Phase 1 trade deal. The Chinese Communist Party's response to the COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan have accelerated our more realistic understanding of Communist China. The party chose to destroy live virus samples instead of sharing them or asking us to help secure them. The Chinese Communist Party chose to threaten Australia with economic retribution for the simple act of asking for an independent inquiry into the origins of the virus. It's not right. We stand with Australia and the more than 120 nations now who have taken up the American call for an inquiry to the origins of the virus so we can understand what went wrong and save lives now and in the future. The Chinese Communist Party also chose to pressure the World Health Organization's Director General into excluding Taiwan from this week's World Health Assembly in Geneva. I understand that Dr. Tedros' unusually close ties to Beijing started long before this current pandemic, and that's deeply troubling. President Xi claimed this week that China's acted with openness, transparency, and responsibility. I wish it were so. It's been 142 days since doctors at Wuhan Central Hospital first started sharing information about a SARS-like virus. And yet, today, as we all sit here this morning, Beijing continues to deny investigators access to relevant facilities, to withhold live virus samples, to censor discussion of the pandemic within China, and much, much more. If the Chinese Communist Party wants to demonstrate real openness, real transparency, it could easily hold press conference like this very press conference and allow reporters to ask him anything that they would like. This plague has cost roughly 90,000 American lives. More than 36 million Americans have lost their jobs since March. Globally, 300,000 lives could be as much as $9 trillion, according to our estimates. Cost imposition on the world by the Chinese Communist Party's failures.
我们敦促蓬佩奥先生摘下意识形态有色眼镜，摒弃冷战零和博弈思维，多做一些与其身份相符的事，停止损害中美互信与合作，停止挑拨中国党政府同人民群众关系的企图。